Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Juana Matias, MassINC COO. We are delighted to welcome you this morning to our 9th annual Gateway Cities Innovation Institute Awards and Summit, Infrastructure for Equitable Economic Growth. Before we begin our official programming, I want to remind you that this event is being recorded and that the recording and slides will be made available to you after the event on our website. Our staff has also shared a link with today's program in the chat function. I am thrilled to be kicking off today's exciting program. Every year, MassINC presents this event, a combination of celebration and substance to support the work of our Gateway Cities Innovation Institute, our nonprofit research institute for the Gateway Cities. This event and the work of the Institute are made possible by our generous sponsors, and I want to take the time to thank each of them for their meaningful commitment and investments in our Gateway Cities. Not only are they committed to advancing equitable growth, but they play a direct part as engines of job growth in our Gateway Cities. I'd like to start off by thanking our extraordinary Gateway Cities champion sponsors, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Eastern Bank, Mass Development, Mass Mutual, and Wayfair, our Gateway City community partners, Enterprise Bank, Trinity Financial, and State Street Corporation. And last, but definitely not least, our Gateway City sustainers, Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation, Pentucket Bank, Blue Hub Capital, Harbor One Bank, Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges, and Keolis. Your generous support makes today's conversation possible, and we thank you for your steadfast commitment in advancing the needs of Gateway Cities across our Commonwealth. The theme for this year's event is Infrastructure for Equitable Growth. Our Gateway Cities have an unprecedented opportunity to invest in their future with federal funding from ARPA and the infrastructure bill. But how do we ensure that our Gateway Cities, their private and public sector partners, position businesses owned by people of color to take full advantage of this unprecedented infusion of federal funding to grow and prosper? We hope that we're able to answer that question throughout today's programming and encourage all of you to tune in and share your ideas and suggestions throughout the event by utilizing the chat function. Now, let's dive in today's program. We'll start with honoring this year's Gateway Cities Champion Honoree and our Mayor Bill Carpenter Award for Excellence in Gateway City Leadership. Then our MassINC Research Director, Ben Foreman, will frame today's discussion with a presentation and turn it over to Boston Globe editor, Shirley Long, who will lead our lineup of experts in a conversation that hopefully inspires those tuned in with the knowledge and tools that will help position Gateway Cities to create inclusive opportunity, spur innovation, job growth, revitalize communities, and generate equitable wealth for our urban centers. Our first recognition is for our Gateway Cities Champion Award. This award recognizes Gateway City leaders who display exceptional commitment to the advancement of public policies that support the growth and renewal of the Commonwealth's Gateway Cities. We are honored to recognize Congressman Richie Neal, serving Massachusetts' 1st Congressional District, for his numerous policy accomplishments, in particular, his steadfast leadership on passenger rail over the years, and most recently, his successful efforts in passing federal recovery legislation. These resources were a lifeline for Gateway City residents throughout the pandemic and beyond. As a way to acknowledge his service, here is a brief tribute video honoring the impact of his work.
From city council to mayor to congressman, Richie's never forgotten his roots, and he realizes that little things mean a lot, whether it's a pothole that needs to be filled or a $1 billion project.
Hardworking, incredibly caring, and very thoughtful, and I think that combination is tremendously effective.
He is still the same regular guy he's always been. But boy, he knows a lot about the history of practically everything. And he thinks that's an important thing when you're trying to make big decisions about federal policy.
He has created and preserved key programs. They aren't always the most flashy, but key programs that puts people in housing, gives them jobs, and gives them a base of healthcare and services that they can rely on.
We grew up in a diverse population. We went to school with a diverse population. We played ball with a diverse population. And that's how you really get to know people and families. You have to have that common touch, and Richie has that. Smart, does his homework, and the stick-to-itiveness. When he gets on something, he's going to continue, and that is evident in the Union Station development that we did. Union Station was the transportation hub for the Springfield area in western Massachusetts. We started to go by the wayside in the 60s and then really in the 70s. And it was closed for many, many years. This became a goal for Congressman Neal to get it redone, a 40-year odyssey. Now, and not only do we have the trains, but you have the intercity buses, and it spurred economic development. That's opened the door now to a concrete discussion on East-West Rail. He was instrumental in really bringing in the bulk of the money to fund this project on the federal level. I always call it the house that Richie built. His work is so critical right now because we were dealing in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic.
Many of the pieces of legislation that have made it possible for people to basically survive over the course of the past 16 months or so have his fingerprints all over them. His efforts, especially on behalf of our healthcare community and our communities of color, has been outstanding.
In East Hampton, we're small, we're a very tight community. Congressman Neal's work on the Payroll Protection Act was key. We lost very few businesses. That Payroll Protection Act and those funds kept them going.
I think certain towns can get left behind while others prosper. And I think Congressman Neal is very focused on communities that are going to benefit significantly from all the efforts he has to bring enterprise, commerce, and other economic development there.
Richie's always been my conduit on the federal level. The funds and the programs that have come in have helped me tremendously to be able to provide for the residents and business community of the city of Springfield a lifeline.
It's good to be with you today for MassINC's Gateway Cities Innovation Institute Summit. I'm grateful for everything you do every day for the Commonwealth Gateway Cities Initiative. It's networks like MassINC that set Massachusetts apart when it comes to innovation, development, and economic growth. And a special thank you to MassINC for awarding me this esteemed honor. I have spent my career fighting for gateway cities like Chicopee, Holyoke, Pittsfield, Springfield, and Westfield because they hold the potential for regional economic success at their fingertips. One of the most important programs that help these cities thrive is the New Markets Tax Credits, a program that I've been a fervent defender of since enacted in the year 2000. It's a cost-effective way to create jobs and drive investment in lower-income communities. New markets are a way to stimulate investment and economic growth in areas that are traditionally overlooked by conventional capital markets. New markets are a good example of how public and private partnerships and investment can be used to spur community and economic revitalization. However, in the midst of the pandemic, the country saw the immediate need for more. As we continue to build back from the devastation, we need to do more in a way that acknowledges the long-standing shortcomings of our society and economics that were exposed and exacerbated by the COVID crisis. The reality is that many of the hardships Americans experienced during the pandemic were merely heightened visions of challenges they faced long before the coronavirus reached our shores. In the past year and a half, we passed monumental legislation like the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, which have put much needed money in the pockets of hardworking Americans as well as shots in our arms, advancing our recovery. I'm proud that the Ways and Means Committee, of which I serve as the chairman, have authored many of these policies that made a tremendous difference in confronting the public health emergency, getting our economy back on track, and supporting folks who were really struggling. Examples of our committee's work include the economic impact payments and emergency unemployment benefits, which gave families liquidity to afford life's essentials and support local businesses. This was critical across our country, but the impact was felt very strongly by individuals and families living in gateway cities. We created the Employee Retention Tax Credit that helped employers keep their employees on payroll during the economic downturn. And we also made historic expansions to tax credits targeted at workers and families, like the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. These and other policies that Congress passed, like the PPP loans and the Provider Relief Fund, the Emergency Rental Assistance, in those instances made a real difference for people and businesses here in the Commonwealth and across America. All of these initiatives were critical across this country, but the impact was felt very strongly by individuals and families living in gateway cities. Now we're turning our focus to what it means to build back better. I share the President's view that big, bold investments in infrastructure are precisely what our country needs. We must recognize that infrastructure is not limited to roads and bridges. Without quality social services such as child care and paid family and medical leave, we cannot build an economy that works for all. Improving our human infrastructure is critical for the United States to attract workers and remain internationally competitive. We must reshape the American economy in a way that is suitable and sustainable for working parents, especially women and people of color who have disproportionately borne the brunt of this pandemic. A robust infrastructure package will also modernize our nation's schools and early learning facilities and build new ones in neighborhoods across Massachusetts and the country. By doing so, we will ensure that the next generation of tech wizards, scientists, inventors, and innovators is set up for success. We cannot afford to delay these much-needed investments any further. Working together, we have the opportunity to propel our country forward. This is an historic moment to make investments that reflect what we've learned during the pandemic, so that the American people will be healthier and our economy will be more inclusive and resilient for generations to come.
Congressman Neal, congratulations once again, and thank you for your years of service at the local, state, and federal level. Your remarks recognize the work that has been accomplished and also set a bold vision for what remains to be done. We appreciate your leadership in advancing policies that make a difference for all, especially those with greatest need. Now, another leader that we are honored to recognize this morning today is Mayor Thomas McGee of Lynn. Mayor McGee is this year's recipient of the Mayor Bill Carpenter Award for Excellence in Gateway City Leadership. This award goes to an elected official who seeks out new ideas and works collaboratively to advance them, elevating the status of their city and furthering the collective interests of gateway cities throughout the Commonwealth. Mayor McGee was selected for this recognition for his years of unwavering public service to Lynn and his steadfast partnership with gateway city leaders across the state. During his time as a state senator and transportation committee chair, he worked collaboratively to pass innovation legislation that improved transportation for the region. As mayor, he continued to lead in this manner, spurring housing production and stimulating economic development. As a way to highlight his efforts, here is a tribute video honoring his commitment to Lynn and our gateway cities in our state.
I think Tom's never been about grabbing headlines and getting press and getting credit for things. I think that's a big part of what's made him successful is that he's in it to get the job done. Doesn't care who gets credit. He does that in a wide range of issues where, he's passionate about, policy or project, lays out the vision, and then carries through in that vision by building, support throughout the community.
Oftentimes, in the past, you've had people who show up and believe they know what's best for the community and try to implement that, absent any voice from the community. Tom's been very careful to bring a substantial amount of knowledge, a substantial amount of experience, a substantial amount of vision to a table, but he's also been careful to make sure that he listens to other people. And in today's society where there's transformations going on in leadership in communities, people expect their elected leaders to listen more than talk. And Tom's a very good example of somebody who listens more than talks, but he's always the one who acts the most.
Tom grew up in the city of Lynn and still lives there today. So he is a local boy, if you will. born and raised. Lynn is in his blood. And as a result, this is the community that he knows the best, the community in which he was raised, and he has now raised his family. So as a result, he has a very personal stake in the success of Lynn. And I think so much of his energies and focus and passion for the betterment of Lynn really comes from that personal experience.
He brought his connections and his partnerships with obviously the state legislature and congressional delegation to parlay, funding that they have for infrastructure projects that he really cared about, from bike lanes to sidewalk improvements. And those little improvements were something that the city never focused on before, and was something that he continued to really feel was a strong part to improving the city as a whole.
He knows the landscape and knows how to work with people and how to get things done, and he stays focused. And in that way, I think he's very disciplined, because he stays on track with the major priorities that are there in front of him without distraction.
In this time when everybody's looking for allies, I think what we have in Tom in this effort of diversity, equity, inclusion is really a co-conspirator. We have somebody who not only supports what we're doing, but he's, his hands are in this process and really going against the grain. It's one of those things that you could say, we have such great allies. But in Tommy, we do have a co-conspirator to get the work done.
Tough to follow that. Pretty impressed by all my friends. Thank you so much for that. But I want to thank MassINC for this honor, named after a former colleague and friend, Mayor Bill Carpenter. Bill was a thoughtful and strong leader. He was a real advocate for Brockton, and including his approach both for substance abuse and addiction treatment, as well as economic development in his city. His sudden loss in 2019 certainly gave me and many others pause to reflect that life can be short, and to constantly remind ourselves and many others to pause and reflect on what we do every day and what's most important. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank those on the video for the kind words and longtime friendship. Words can't say enough to thank you for being part of this, and I'm really, in some ways, at a loss for words. It's not often in this job that you get a chance to reflect on your work and accomplishments. And this is especially meaningful given the fact that I've chosen not to run for re-election this year. This is actually the second time in over 65 years that a McGee, either my dad or I, have been on the ballot in the city of Lynn. And for 27 years, I've had the privilege and honor to serve the people of Lynn in various capacities. It has been an honor of a lifetime. And I hope I've made those that live in the city of Lynn proud of the work that I've done and the work that the team we have together have done. I want to thank my family, many of who are virtually here this morning, for their unwavering support behind the scenes and always standing by my side throughout my career and being there for me. And anybody in public life knows you can't do it without your family. Thank you to my family. Thank you to my amazing team within my office and throughout various city departments in the city over the last 4 challenging yet rewarding years, and also to my former staff over the last 27 years. There are a number of them kind enough to join here virtually this morning as well, and I'm glad that they're here with us. I try to say this often, and I couldn't say it enough or with enough passion, but I couldn't do this job without any of my staff over the years. They have all worked so hard with patience and grace, especially during the challenging and unprecedented times, to move Lynn forward in the right direction, to be the city we all know, and to reach the potential that we all work for every day. Again, I want to thank all of you at MassINC for this award. It's been a pleasure to collaborate with all of your staff over the years on important issues, on economic development, as you all know, especially on transportation, which I bring a strong passion to. I want to congratulate the rest of the award winners. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. And again, I'm so honored, and in many ways at a loss for words. It's an amazing opportunity, and I look forward to in the future being involved and being able to continue to advocate for the things that are important to me, but are important to all of us here as part of this great organization. Thanks again. I'm truly honored for this award.
Mayor McGee, congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. Talk about being the embodiment of a public servant. I see the chat just firing up with people who support you and know the legacy of your work. Thank you for inspiring us this morning. And I know that you will be retiring, but I know that you'll remain in service to Lynn and our gateway cities. So thank you for being here. Now it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, MassINC's Gateway Cities Innovation Institute Executive Director, Ben Foreman. For over a decade, Ben has been a leader on Gateway City policy, and today he will present some additional data to help ground our panel discussion. Ben, take it away for us.
Well, thank you very much, Juana. And congratulations again to Mayor McGee. There's nothing as inspiring as the chance to work alongside a mayor's mayor, and certainly to Congressman Neal. There are no words or an award to recognize the debt of gratitude we have for the leadership you're providing at this difficult time in Washington. Those of you who've been following what we've been trying to do this year know that we've been talking a lot about the impact of falling levels of entrepreneurship on regional economic development. Since we've seen these data, we've been bringing them out and sharing them every chance we get. And I just want to quickly set the panel conversation up with them. At both the state and the national level, the number of small business starts has been trending down literally for decades. And you can see it in this chart here, which only goes back to 2005 at the state level. Some of this downward trend is explained by technology and industry consolidation. With the internet, we don't need the bookstores or the video stores or the record stores and all those things anymore. But economists have told us and shown us that this isn't just about that. It's also a lot about changing demographics. We don't have as many entrepreneurs as we had in the past, in part because our white population is contracting. And people of color don't have access to the same opportunities and capital that they need to successfully launch new business enterprises. Now, the good news is entrepreneurs of color are increasingly starting new companies, but they remain dramatically underrepresented in the Massachusetts economy. You can see that here. The number of Black and Hispanic residents working in their own incorporated businesses has picked up a lot in recent years, but this growth is from a very low base, and these businesses that are launched by people of color are far less likely to survive. So that means white residents are still twice as likely in Massachusetts to own their own business as Black and Hispanic residents. Until we ensure that people of color who start businesses have the same access to capital, networks, and markets that they need to succeed, it's going to be difficult to close these really large gaps. As communities of color, the future of our Commonwealth's economy then hinges on Gateway City economic development leadership. Gateway cities need thriving and inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystems where people of color have real belonging and ownership. While we don't have good data at the city level, what we can see from looking at the state's designated minority-owned business listing is a bit concerning. Gateway cities are home to 27% of all businesses in Massachusetts, but just 21% of the state's designated minority-owned businesses. Minority-owned businesses are even more represented in gateway cities when you consider that these communities are home to 42% of people of color in Massachusetts. And again, just 21% of the state's designated minority-owned businesses. The supplier diversity data can also give us a picture of what sectors our gateway city designated minority-owned businesses are operating in. And you can see here that over a third are in construction. And when we add in other fields like architecture and engineering, professional services, transportation, logistics, staffing, you can see there's a whole bunch of firms that could benefit from the billions of dollars of recovery investment that's going to flow into our gateway cities in the coming years, and hopefully much more with the infrastructure bill. But how ready are these businesses to compete for those dollars? When we compare the listings of state designated minority-owned businesses to Dun & Bradstreet data, we find less than 1 in 10 of them represented, which suggests these businesses are mostly very small in scale with limited revenue. Before I turn over now to Shirley and the panel, I'll leave you with one much more hopeful data point. Returning now to the first slide, If we were to update the trend with the post-COVID pattern, you'd see a dramatic rise in business formations in Massachusetts. The popular media interpretation we're hearing about this blip is people just don't want to go back to the old grind, and they're using this pandemic break to pursue entrepreneurship. But I know what we've seen in Massachusetts is a huge reaction to the PPP loan debacle and recognition that we need to reckon with racial inequality. We've reached out to hundreds of business owners of color in ways we never had previously and connected them to hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. Word is spreading that the playing field is no longer tilted so heavily against entrepreneurs of color, and they're responding. The state has an opportunity now to reinforce this energy and momentum by using ARPA funds to seed these businesses with billions more in growth capital and connect them to public procurement opportunities so that businesses of color can be part of our collective effort to build back better. So many Gateway City leaders and community-based organizations are playing major roles, setting us up to take advantage of this massive opportunity. But we must acknowledge today that they have an unbelievable media champion helping to get the message out there. In compelling columns week after week, she tells the personal stories, giving life to the untapped potential of entrepreneurs of color. It's my privilege now to welcome her to lead this morning's conversation. Shirley Leong, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Thanks for your kind words. And you know, I love data, so thank you for the data. Really eye-opening here. And congratulations to Congressman Neal and Mayor McGee on their awards. Mayor McGee, I know you're retiring, but there's still a lot of work to be done in transportation, and I hope fixing the T continues to be part of your next chapter. So, you know, as Juana mentioned in her opening remarks, MassINC wanted to focus today's conversation on how to create a more equitable recovery. And, you know, when you talk to government and policy leaders, especially in gateway cities, they're always complaining about the lack of resources. But these days, communities find themselves awash in federal rescue funds and the potential for even more money if Congress passes this infrastructure bill. And so it's really a once in a generation opportunity to create a more equitable future. But the question now is, are we ready? You know, how do we get ready? How do we prepare? You know, what do we need to do to get this right? And that's today's conversation, very important conversation we're going to have today. And we have 4 esteemed panelists to share insights and, you know, recommend policies and tools. And so hopefully panelists can flip on their cameras as I mention their names. So first up is Dan Rivera. You know, we still call him Mayor around here. He's the CEO of Mass Development. Hi, Mayor. That's the quasi-public economic development agency. Dan was appointed by Governor Baker in January after serving 7 years as the mayor of Lawrence. On Dan's watch, Lawrence flourished with commercial development and record new units of housing, and there was tens of millions of dollars poured into economic development projects. I had a nice tour with Dan back when you guys want to be the Amazons. Remember that Amazon, the second corporate headquarters for Amazon. So I still think there's another one for you for Lawrence, and now you're at Mass Development, you can do that. So remember to unmute when you get a chance. We have Kenan Bigby. He's the Managing Director of Development. Hi, Kenan, at Trinity Financial in Boston. Over the course of 2 decades at Trinity, Kenan has managed over $1 billion in development for the company, representing more than 2,500 units in housing. His specialty is creating multifamily housing. We know that is something that our region desperately needs, and often he does this through public-private partnerships. Next is JC Burton. She's the founder and CEO. There's JC, CEO of Maven Construction in Dorchester. Her firm, another $1 billion. I get to throw these $1 billion numbers around. Her firm has put in place $1.2 billion in projects as a general contractor and construction manager. Her work is centered around energy and water sustainability. Maven Construction has worked on more LEED certified projects than any other African-American general contractor in New New England. So congratulations, JC. And then last but not least is Phil Thompson. I think he's coming in from New York. He is the Deputy Mayor for Strategic Policy Initiatives for the City of New York. There's Phil, Deputy Mayor. So Phil oversees an expansive portfolio that includes the Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises Program, the Office of Workforce Development, and the Young Men's Initiative. Prior to joining the de Blasio administration, Thompson was an associate professor of urban planning at MIT. This is Deputy Mayor Thompson's second stint in New York City politics. He also served in the Dinkins administration as Deputy General for Operations and Development. So as everybody's on, right? I got 4 of you. All right, I can count here. So anyways, I was hoping we can start off by drawing from some lessons from previous infusions of federal dollars. Whether policymakers did enough to create an inclusive process for underrepresented business owners. And I wanted to go back to 2009 when there was federal money through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. That's where communities were encouraged to come up with quote unquote shovel-ready projects to spur job growth. So was that an inclusive process? Who was around back then to kind of talk about that? I think JC and Kennan or Deputy Mayor Thompson, who wants to start us off?
I can start. So yeah, Trinity Financial was definitely active and participated in deploying those resources to further our projects. As you described in the intro, we do multifamily housing, and so that was our focus, and we accessed those funds to bring some projects to the finish line that would have otherwise not been able to move. In terms of a focus on equity and participation, I don't remember that those goals were specifically attached to the resources, but we as a company have a policy of maximizing participation, whether it's at the worker level, at the subcontracting level, or in our operations. And so that definitely, just by its nature, was a part of what we were doing. The other thing that I will say is that it's not as if there aren't initiatives existing to try to address this. The challenge is in coordinating all of those disparate initiatives. So for example, we were doing work with HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, to redevelop some public housing. And they have a Section 3 program as part of the HUD regulations that speak to involving residents of public housing or low-income residents in that neighborhood as part of your projects. And so we were able to do some things working with the federal government with these funds. I think the challenge is, how do you make that a sustainable effort? And how do you coordinate all of these different pieces to make it as impactful as possible?
JC, you were telling me how you had just started your business, right? The year before. And so, so what was your experience trying to go after some of these contracts?
Yeah, the climate was much different than we were having. I mean, not only were we having an economic downturn, the economy was flat in every way. A little different than what we have now, where we have both growth and then also a decline. And as a startup company, in 2008, we were certainly crushed in many ways by some of our very large competitors, and had to figure out how to pivot, and maybe even become a little bit more scrappy so that we could participate in some of those shovel-ready projects that were primarily identified, just as Kennan had said. They were in categories of housing, and then also school projects or municipally funded projects were also at the top of the list, to just try to make sure that the economies could continue to grow with cities. And so some of our clients were looking for us, saying, there's just not a way for us to compete at this point in time. And we had to provide or pivot and come out and start providing some professional services in order to stay afloat. Very different circumstance what we have today, which is a real opportunity to make sure that we are prioritizing people of color, business and small businesses in a way that has never been done before.
I mean, that's a great segue into what happened in last year with the Paycheck Protection Program. I know early on there was a lot of complaints about, the biggest companies got put to the front of the line. But at the end, there was a dramatic change in the PPP program. And I was hoping, Deputy Mayor Thompson, you could talk a little bit about what you saw in New York City. Was the PPP more equitable? Did a lot of women and minority-owned businesses get the money, and why, if that did happen in your experience?
So initially, a lot of the PPP money bypassed businesses in communities of color, mainly because the money went to businesses that already had a banking relationship with the biggest banks. And many of the smaller MWBEs didn't have those accounts with the big banks. And so literally they just lost out. When PPP was revised to set aside monies for small community-based financial institutions, credit unions, CDFIs, more MWBEs were able to take advantage of that, and it was very helpful. Also in New York, the way PPP was structured, it paid for employees, like it was based on how many employees you had to lay off, et cetera. In New York, rent is a huge issue, and reimbursement is needed there as much as for employees. And so a lot of businesses didn't qualify because, they weren't being reimbursed for the rent. And so they couldn't take advantage of it. And lastly, a lot of immigrant-based businesses had a hard time with language access. And many of our smaller minority businesses aren't online. And so they literally couldn't even send in forms and things like that online. So those things are challenges, but, eventually it started to work out better. If I may say something about the previous question, I wanted to just say, in 2009, MWBEs in New York mainly missed it. Were not able to take advantage of it because there wasn't a robust system. And one of the things we learned from that is that if we want MWBE inclusion on government contracts, then government has to systematically enable that. And so we've since created a robust certification program where we've investigate whether MWBEs are in fact MWBEs. We have 10,000 certified MWBEs. We set up city financing, bonding, and insurance programs to help them overcome those barriers. We have MWBE officers at a high level and all of the contracting agencies. So there's somebody making sure the agencies just don't do business as usual, and they include MWBEs and reach out to them. And we have mentorship programs for MWBs to help them learn the ropes and grow. And we're beginning to tackle venture investments for MWBs because they don't have access to venture capital either. So all of those things are components of a system. And we take that approach. And it's been successful. We're now up in the billions, 16 billion so far in the de Blasio administration to MWBEs. That's way above where it was earlier in 2009, 2010.
Well, you're doing a lot in New York. That's great. Dan, can you talk a little bit about your experience when you were Mayor Lawrence and what happened to the entrepreneurs of color in your city as it relates to PPP? Are there kind of do's and don'ts that you learned in terms of?
I think that's the deputy mayor said it really well. The things that we were facing here as well, except that for us, we were very fortunate that the Baker administration rolled out through Mass Build Capital tons of dollars that went directly because of their partnerships with CDFIs and organizations like that, got the money to, at least in Lawrence, to those folks on the ground. And they did so much. I mean, Larry who runs MDCC, who has those stats on the top of his head, but they, millions and millions and millions of dollars that PPP couldn't get to, the governor's plan to get them into, it was very important getting that done. So even though folks were finding it very, this is always this thing, like if you're the most prepared, will be able to take advantage of that. And what we found was even those folks who we had prepared through the gas crisis, because we had to prepare them after the Merrimack Valley gas crisis, even those people were still being put at the end of the line. And so, it was really, we felt that level of frustration, but we wanted to cut the red tape by letting people apply for stuff with pictures from their phones, as opposed to having to actually go on a website or walk into a place and make an application. All those things, making them more accessible to people who basically have to run their business at the same time they're trying to advocate for themselves.
JC, you actually got a PPP loan, right? What was your experience getting one?
We did. We were part of that second round that Deputy Mayor talked about. The first round, we were crushed. We were heartbroken that very large companies were able to secure that, but we didn't stop. And so we were able to secure a loan that allowed us to keep our employees on staff. We didn't have to lay anybody off, but it was certainly gut-wrenching at first, right? When you know that you need it the most. Minority and small-owned businesses, or business owned by people of color, usually have smaller margins. So to try to carry your payroll for people is important to them, but then also very difficult for minority-led companies, people of color. So we, fortunately, having a good relationship with our CDFI, were able to secure some funding that did allow us to keep people on staff, and we didn't have to lay anybody off. It was tremendously rewarding and certainly a stress reliever.
So, often women and women-owned companies and companies owned by entrepreneurs of color, people of color, they aren't big enough or lack the experience to go after these big contracts, public sector contracts. And so, what role do municipalities have in helping smaller minority-owned businesses partner with larger firms to place competitive bids and provide access to capital? I mean, Phil told us a little bit what they're doing in New York. Ken, and I know that you have some thoughts on this because you actually work with contractors who are unable to meet some of your very ambitious diversity goals. You try to work with them on that, right?
Right. It's important to not just set goals and sort of tell people, try to do this, but to provide the supports if you want to see results. And so what we try to do is build a network, build a team that can assist our development team in outreaching to and bringing on individuals and businesses of color onto the project. And so that's working with nonprofit organizations that are active in the specific communities that we're working, that have access to people, are able to provide training, are able to provide technical assistance to subcontractors to help them access those packages and get on the job. It's working directly with our general contractors to break down packages so that they're not, at a size that a smaller company can't, buy insurance or bonding, don't have the bonding capacity to take on those contracts, break them down so that they fit the business profile of those folks that we're trying to reach. And then working with our friends in the public sector to figure out ways that we can utilize the resources that they have. There's lots of small business resources that municipalities have that can be part of the formula to maximize participation. So we really try to leave no stone unturned when we're putting together a diversity or outreach program. And each project is different, each community is different, and each sort of the makeup of the teams are different on each project. So it's not like we've got one formula that always works. What we try to do is make meaningful connections in our communities, bring folks on to the team, and do our level best to just maximize opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that if we continue to do the same thing, we continue to get the same results, right? So our cities have to be bold in thinking about how to transform their neighborhood and their communities. One of the things that cities can do, especially the gateway cities, is to make sure that they're investing in small businesses, businesses owned by people of color as a priority, And then also look at how they can right size the risk. If in fact a municipality has a set of contracts they can put out to bid, are those the right size? Are those contracts small enough so that many people can participate in those? Are the bonding requirements set where it is appropriate? Are the insurance limits set that are appropriate? Is there a way that you can partner with the state to work on mitigating some of that risk? I think there are lots of things that they can do, but what's most important is provide a technical assistance, both in format of an individual that can helps run a small business or help them grow, and then also a technical assistance grant that can allow businesses to have additional funding where they can deploy capital to their companies and utilize it in the way that they best see fit. Sometimes as a small business and as a contractor, you may only need a piece of equipment, right? But you don't necessarily know where to go to get the piece of equipment. You could look at the state, and there are several programs within the state that allow you to do that. But if your city is able to say, hey, I've got a grant program that will allow you to do that, that could be the difference between your company scaling to grow or you just staying pretty flat.
I just wanted to say real quick, as JC hit a couple of things that's really important, and that's every municipality should have a great relationship with some type of technical support organization, a BECMA or Latin Amplify Latinx or MCCI in the North, that will help you get closer to the ground and get those people done. And you got to pay those people. I don't want to say that's a free relationship. You got to pay those people so they can go into the bodegas, they can go into the barbershops, they can go in these places and help people get the technical assistance they want. But the idea, one of the things that's really important is that not to let the attorneys scare you. Procurement is boogity boo thing, and you're going to get thrown in jail. As long as there's no graft, corruption, and stealing and waste, you're not going to go to jail for that stuff. And I want people to be empowered to be entrepreneurial in the way they put these things together. So the RFPs have to be simpler, with less, and I don't mean simple as in dumb it down for us. I mean simple as that, do you really need all these whistles and bells that go into, because we've got used to it, into these RFPs. And frankly, if regular taxpayers saw what goes into some of these RFPs that we're asking vendors for, X amount of lay down space and X amount of, total, can you get X amount of equipment and other stuff that's really, it's a high bar. And even in some levels of insurance, and you say, well, Danny, if you get less insurance, isn't that making it less? No, sometimes we ask for so much insurance just because it makes us feel good. You don't really need this stuff. Have the RFP call for DEI partnerships. They have that control. So again, I want to make sure folks, you need to have those, JC was talking about those relationships with technical assistance organizations, and don't let attorneys scare you into being brave on this front.
If I could add two things we're doing, and building on what was already said. One, for contracts under $500,000, we got state legislation that agencies can do contracting with MWBEs without an RFP if it's under $500,000, but this only applies for MWBEs. So it has incentivized agencies to actually contract with MWBEs because they don't have to do all the paperwork, et cetera. And a second thing, a year ago, we signed a voluntary agreement with the construction building trades that 30% of everyone on the job in a city-funded construction project must come from public housing or from a zip code of 15% higher levels of poverty. And 9% of everyone on the job has to be an apprentice. And what that has meant is that MWBEs actually, contractors look for them to help fulfill that requirement, but it also means 6,000 job opportunities a year, new job opportunities a year in communities of color. And that's another way to go at this, is on the workforce side as well. We don't only have to look at the contracting side.
On the topic of procurement, let's talk, and Dan alluded to this about don't let the attorneys scare you. Let's talk. I mean, this does come up in trying to diversify supplier diversity. What about should government set very specific goals around procurement? Does that work? Should every community do this to kind of measure progress and to get where we need to go?
I think my personal opinion on this is that, and I think it has worked on both setting levels and not setting levels, is that you're gonna have to do the work of finding these people to apply for the RFP anyway. And so don't set it and then just go make sure that people of color are in the RFP pool. That's where you're gonna fall down. Everybody's like, well, we got this huge win. In the RFP, you have to do 20%. And then no one applies. And then you're like, what do we do then? And so the work of getting the right people and then making, again, it's not graft and corruption if you don't know the vendors and you're encouraging them to apply. What a boost it is for municipalities anywhere in the organization to say, hey, I got a call from the DPW director. He said for me, I should apply. Now I feel a little bit more, oh man, the mayor's office is sending these things out to emails, or the town manager's office is sending emails to minority and women-owned businesses to apply to this thing. The chance is greater if I'm getting that type of communication. But you can go either way. I think people can find that either way will work. But I think it's better to spend that energy not fighting about that level and going to get that level on your own in there.
I think we've got to be really intentional. If we want Black and Brown community or business owners to participate and to have an opportunity to participate in our economy, which is what we're really talking about. We've got to be able to track numbers and identify numbers and set goals. And the only way they're able to have success is if we identify, every city can set their own individual goal. In many ways, I feel like we should be reflecting what's in the census. The census is telling us where our state is going. It's reflecting the people of color that are in the state, yet the economy does not reflect the same. So once there's an alignment in that equity side of it, by setting a goal, then we're able to have stronger partnerships with municipalities and also with business owners to help us all go, march along as we need to. In that case, we'll also solve some of the other problems that we have. We'll solve transportation problems. People won't have to leave outside of their city to go someplace else to work, especially if you're in construction. You'll solve likely to solve some food access issues. You're likely to solve some issues related to daycare and early childhood education, just because people are able to work closer to where they live. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to really move the needle by setting bold and audacious goals that really reflect what the state is diversity numbers and what our demographics are telling us.
Yeah, I would agree. I think symbolically it's important to set those goals, but that is just the beginning, right? You can't set the goals and then sort of say, look at how progressive we are, or this is the answer to the problem. You got to do the work, like Mayor Rivera said. But I do think sort of symbolically and to make sure that it's front and center, setting those goals are important. We've seen the results of sort of trying to do this behind the scenes or not addressing it at all is a pretty dismal track record of participation at all levels. So I do think it is important to sort of be loud and visible about this objective.
Yeah, I just want to add on one more thing. I saw the comment earlier by someone that was participating in the session that said that the number of construction companies has grown significantly that have been owned by minority or people of color, I should say. It has grown significantly, yet we still only reflect a very small amount of the actual state construction and or city construction. We are less than 15% of the state's economy is going towards Black and Brown contractors. And I'd say that number is woefully under 10. And I could also say with confidence that within every city in this Commonwealth, the number of construction projects that are going to minority and Black and Brown owned companies is less than 5%, right? So even though the number of companies are there, the opportunity to participate is much smaller. We have to invest in our small businesses, especially our contractors, the same way we invest in our technology companies. We have to pour in money to a leader who's got a great idea, surround them with tremendous support, be patient, allow them to develop as a leader, allow them to develop the operations, and then watch them scale, and everyone benefits.
Great. Deputy Mayor Thompson, do you want to say anything about metrics in New York City? It sounds like you've done a lot of work on this front in terms of, trying to set some goals, or at least, I mean, it sounds like it's something you guys might be further along than the city of Boston, much further along in dealing with.
Contracts. We set goals, but as was said, meeting goals is the challenge. And our biggest contracts are actually in engineering and things like mechanical engineering, where even in New York City, there are no Black or Latino mechanical engineering firms. And so they don't get contracts in areas of our biggest spend for our mega 10, 20-year infrastructure projects. They do not go to Black and Latino firms because they don't exist, because the opportunity's never been there. And so, my argument is we have to go after Black and Latino firms and invite them into New York with a red carpet the same way everybody went after Amazon. If it really matters to you, you just don't roll out a red carpet for Amazon. You roll out the red carpet for businesses that are going to hire people of color and mentor other businesses of color and so on. So that's the attitude we're taking. And you have to hold agencies accountable, not just general metrics, but agency by agency, commissioner by commissioner, and we do that. And if a commissioner doesn't follow the procedure that we lay down in terms of inclusion, then our MWBE office, and I'm the city's MWB officer, we can audit those contracts and we will stop the contract. You will not have any contract.
And a really great example of that is that we spend a lot of money doing appraisals, like every property in real estate. We're the state's land bank, and every time we do a real estate transaction, either for lending or anything, we have to do an appraisal. I could not find, and I'm told that there is not one. I'm not going to say there isn't one. I'm going to say I could not find, and I was told there isn't a person of color who is an appraiser in the Commonwealth. It's like, it's weird to me, and so I posted it on my LinkedIn. Hey, we need these people, because it's $7,000 every time we do it, and we do hundreds of them every year. Now it's just $7,000. I'm just like, that's an example of this, of the way these contracts are. Now we're going to fight every day for the stuff that's, that we know we have vendors for, but there is a need to make, so I want to help all people get that. Every time I talk to somebody, I say, hey, you should get the appraisal contract because we can help you out.
So I want to segue into how to spend money. A lot of cities, either they're sitting on rescue money or rescue money is due to them. But look what's happened with the rent relief money. Like Uncle Sam has written the checks, but it's just sitting in the bank, and municipalities have struggled, government has struggled to get the money actually into the hands of tenants who need it so they won't be evicted out of their homes. And so how do we make sure this doesn't happen again with the federal rescue dollars, that cities can't administer, can't get organized, or there's too much red tape, they can't get this money into where it needs to go?
I got to just start by saying, you got to fight the bureaucracy at every turn. If challenge them, say, hey, do you really need 10 pieces of paper, or can 5 do? Or, hey, we had all these applications for PPP. Can I just give you the PPP application? Like, challenge the process, because sometimes the bureaucracy isn't because it makes the process better or more, transparent. It just makes it easier for the bureaucrats. And so I can leave on a Friday early because this process is easier for me. And I'm like, hey, why don't you stay late so we can get 7 checks more out the door? And so that's what we used to do, just fight the bureaucracy first and foremost. And don't let go back to this piece, don't let the bureaucrats and the attorneys scare you into doing what they want you to do. They're not laws, they're policies. And so if there's a way that you can do that, and then, be creative, start now. I will say again, no lying, cheating, or stealing, graft, corruption, or waste. But you gotta start now. If you have vendors in your community, do there's small projects going on in your community, but you got to fight the bureaucracy.
I would agree with that. I would sort of add to it. We need to revisit sort of the mindset. I'm talking specifically about the rental, emergency rental relief dollars, but this could be applied, I think, to similar programs across the board, right? The mindset of we need to make sure this gets to quote unquote the right people. And so there's all these layers and hoops and bureaucracy that Mayor Dan mentioned that ends up bottlenecking this stuff. Whereas a mindset of saying we need to get this money into our communities and to our people, and we can figure out sort of if there is fraud or inefficiencies after the fact, but the impact of getting those dollars out is more important than X% of inefficiency. And I think we need to flip that mindset that says make it tough to get, freeze out everyone who may not be the quote unquote right person as the starting point. I think it needs to be worked the other way. This money was authorized to flow into our communities to shore up a big problem, and it should be first put out there to do that, and then you try to address some of these other concerns.
I would just add that it would be great if we didn't have to go through the state bureaucracy in order to access federal funds. And I'm speaking now as a city. Last summer, in the midst of the COVID highest level of crisis in New York, we had billions of dollars in state, like we're feeding 1 million people a day, but we went into debt because we couldn't tie it up in the. So I just want to echo what, and when federal money comes, if it can go directly to cities and not have to go through a complete another layer of variety of the state, that.
I think we're losing you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, but I think you raised a really good point about not going through the state, though. I think on Beacon Hill, they're fighting amongst themselves on whether on how to distribute that money. Anyways, one of the things that we had talked about as a group, and maybe Dan, you can talk a little bit about this, is about the need, and maybe also Deputy Mayor Thompson, is that cities, it can be overwhelming to get all this money, and they need to really think about the administration of the money and maybe hire outside consultants or get some help or hire staff. Just don't do it with existing staff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I think the success that we've seen with MGCC, the success that we've seen even with when we were dealing with the gas crisis and helping small businesses, is those relationships closest to those people, and CDCs, CDFIs, even E for All. It was in Lawrence. It was the Lawrence Partnership. Like, it was an all hands on deck. Can you get somebody to go to those businesses and see what they need? But you have to have leadership in a person like Larry over at MGCC to be able to bring that to fruition. But that cities and towns should have, because they probably have one economic development director, one community development director, and one planning director. And that's good for the things that you have going on the table. But in an emergency situation, you have to be able to scale fast. And I think that has been, the entrepreneurial spirit with all the stuff that we had to get done in the Merrimack Valley gas crisis, working with the governor on that. The entrepreneurial spirit is definitely important, and you need to have those relationships because you're just not going to be able to, and by the way, it's a good farm system too. So if you have like good people that are working for E for All, you might be able to hire them away and have them go work for the city. But you have to
don't tell E for All that.
I haven't been successful once with E for All. I've tried many times.
I would say that you need a big table that includes community, as well as small business, as well as city agencies that cross silos. So the state gave building C. We then gave the same MWBE a contract for broadband installation in those buildings. And then we used federal relief money, COVID relief money, to train 1,500 young people in the Bronx. They solar in those buildings in the Bronx. And these were 1,500 at-risk young people. And that took community, that took coordination across agencies with MWEs and others to have a whole plan. I think cities need to plan like that in an inclusive way.
We have about 10 minutes left in our panel, and I still got a few more questions. And I wanted to talk a little bit, we talked about, how to, at the government level, how do we get money out? But at the, private sector level, we know we're in a very tight labor market right now. There's as is before this, infusion of federal dollars comes in and gets spent, companies are struggling to hire people. And so what role do cities have or in helping with this labor market shortage to recruit and train people for jobs that will be created by the federal monies? And JC, maybe you could start off talking about what you're already doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of small businesses are very nimble. In many ways, when we had the downturn in the economy last year and during COVID, we had to cross-train our people so that they could learn new skills. And many small businesses are doing that, so that they can retain the staff and the team members that they have. Cities have to partner with small businesses for training. As the key expert in construction, I can train someone differently than maybe a municipality can, because I have a different lens. And so we have to partner so that we can have training that's similar to, I think, what we were hearing from Deputy Mayor Thompson that New York is doing. All of our cities, all of our gateway cities have the same opportunities to do so. So partner with small businesses and with people of color, businesses led by people of color, to help in training and grow. It's hard to involve yourself in it, or to see yourself involved in an economy if you can't see reflection of yourself. If Dan and Kenan and I are the only people of color that some of our younger and emerging leaders see out in the space, and there's definitely more than just 3 of us, but if they don't see very many of us being successful, it's very hard to attract them into the pipeline of work, and it's going to be needed. Our project sizes in gateway cities and in the Commonwealth, as well as New York, are increasingly larger, and they're going to require more workforce, more manpower. And not only do we need to train them on the skill side, we need to train them on the professional services side, how to schedule a project, how to estimate a project, how to be a project accountant on a construction project, how to do reporting to developers like Kenan, what they need for their side of it, how to do contract administration. All of those are construction related jobs that contractors can help train staff with, and also cities, municipalities, and for the state, for that matter, can also partner to do that.
I also was wondering, is there a role for labor unions to help with the labor shortage, to help, retrain some of their members or recruit new people to fill some of these jobs?
You've gotten into a really sticky situation now, but I'm going to take it head on. The answer is yes and yes. Our organized labor unions have such a wonderful opportunity to do the right thing and to start to invite more people of color into the unions, to really ban the box in some ways for some set of first offenders that haven't had an opportunity to get in, but then also to really grow a whole emerging generation of skilled labor. And right now there appear to be barriers depending on which organized labor, depending on which discipline, which trade. There are certainly barriers there that often are not fair. The first thing that we need to ask them to do unilaterally is to track how many people of color they have within their unions here in the Commonwealth. We don't really know. And so from that, we'll have a baseline, and I'm sure anything that we do will be an improvement, because it is very challenging when I have to call a union and say, hey, I'm on a specific project, especially in a gateway city or in a city that's tracking the economic numbers of participation of people of color and women. And I call a union shop to get some experienced labor, and they don't have any women, or they don't have any people of color. It's really challenging for me as a contractor to be able to meet those barriers or those goals. And so we do need our union leaders as partners in the solution in the process.
I would double down on that and just say that last piece is that they have they know how to train people. So we definitely should lean on them to be part of, if we're trying to spend money fast and get that money at the door, to train trainers is a lot. We're going to take the timeline off. So I think, again, doubling down on what JC said, 100% of that stuff we should definitely be doing. On top of that, I just want to know, if we're trying to get money out the door, we need to make sure we're using the unions to help us train the folks. And on top of that, to make sure that there aren't subcontractors out there taking advantage of people of color who are, we have, they call them like sheetrock mills, where people, undocumented people, end up doing all this work, and sometimes they get paid and sometimes they don't, or they're working in conditions that can hurt them. So, making sure that people are trained in a certain way, but also making sure the contractors, that are less reputable aren't being funded through this process.
If I could triple down on that, because this is a crucial issue. I have said to the building trades of New York, look, both houses of our state legislature are Black-led right now, and we have an incoming Black. You really need to pay attention to the issue of inclusion. And by the way, your suburban kids don't want to go into construction. The people who do, who you can recruit, are largely Black and brown people. So if you want to survive, you got to change. And I also say, my people didn't work 250 years as slaves without a paycheck and not know we had a labor issue. You're the one who's kept us out of labor unions, not because we don't understand labor issues. And so you could have a bright future, but you got to change. And they hear that. That's why they agreed to the project labor agreement I mentioned earlier. And I think we need them, but they have to open their doors, period.
Great. I have two questions, but I only have time for one to answer, to kind of throw you guys one question. So I'm going to go with the human infrastructure question, which is, Congressman Neal had mentioned this in his remarks, the need for human infrastructure. I'm not sure if it comes in and out of the bill at the federal level. I don't think it's, but I wanted to throw this out there, which is, if there is no funding for childcare or housing, the human infrastructure side, what is the role of the state and municipalities to step up on these fronts? I mean, what can they do to help the human infrastructure and plug the holes there? Dan, you're on mute.
What we learned really fast was that childcare is such an important part of everybody's life. I'm not really sure why we didn't know that before, but and so we took money from our free cash in Lawrence, and we helped to put some money into vouchers for people to have childcare who were workers that had to be in the line, that couldn't be home. So childcare, you could definitely pay for it. But I would just say the people who, especially right now in all these social issues, who are playing the bigger role are the private sector. And so you have to figure out a way, as you're trying to figure out how to keep your employees with you, to pay for childcare, to create a childcare environment. That should be another perk, is around like healthcare and things like that, because otherwise you're going to get to the issue you've been writing about, the she session, where people aren't going to be able to get, my wife's working at home, and if the kid's sick, she's got to be there and work at the same time. And so then I'm there too to help out. But if we don't do the childcare, which is, to me, is like the easiest infrastructure piece, is childcare, because everyone is feeling it. And and by the way, it's also an economic development thing, because there's a lot of people of color in it and a lot of small businesses in that way.
Yeah, it's become clear that all of those aspects of quote unquote human infrastructure are necessary for our society to function the way we want it to function. I'm going to push back a little bit on Mayor Rivera of calling it a private sector problem to solve. I think, as with all of these questions, right, it's complicated. It's going to take multiple parties at the table. But I do think investing in the existing infrastructures are important, right? We have a public school system. It just doesn't include pre-K. It could very easily be expanded to include pre-K. I don't think we need to sort of reinvent the wheel here. We just need to put our money, invest our money in our priorities. And too often, all too often, the money's not invested in our priorities. It's invested in places that aren't going to touch the day-to-day lives of our families, our community. And I think aligning those interests is important.
I like to say, as a mom of a 10-year-old now, and last year I tried to figure out how to teach her 4th grade, get to a construction site, run a business, motivate my team, and look at the future. It was quite tough. So early childhood education is certainly important. It's crucial to being able to have women involved in construction trades. And accessible childcare is important, where a mom or a parent can drop their child at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, get to work to a project site at 6, and then be able to pick that child up later in the afternoon, because construction hours are different than our 8 to 5 businesses, right? So understanding that cycle is important. Helping employers with employee-sponsored childcare is super important, whether in the form of a grant. We can prove, we had kids kind of running around our offices last year because it was needed, it was necessary. And we all kind of, parents like needed to know that we were sharing in this weird experience together. But I can say that employee-sponsored childcare is super important. States can set policy around this that can help with setting policy around it. States can also help on the equity investment with that. So I think that there's lots of things that can be done. Some of them we've talked about and they've been noted, but states certainly have to be able to make sure they can provide different ways and creative ways that employers that are willing to take on the risk can help with the human infrastructure.
In New York, we instituted pre-K 7 years ago, and it's been a game changer. And school achievement is up in neighborhoods of color. Crime is down. Community college graduation rates are up. It was essential in coming out of the pandemic to enable people to go back to work. And at this point, the city would never allow us to get rid of that program because it has just been so helpful. I just don't understand people who don't understand why this is important. I don't even get it. It's like the most important thing there is to enable, if we want to eliminate poverty, and we can, this is how you do it. And do you want to spend money on prisons and jail? Or do you actually want to have whole solid communities where everybody's working and paying taxes and people are happy? Like I don't get it.
Thank you. We are fast out of time. I would just want to thank all our panelists, Deputy Mayor Thompson, Mayor Rivera, J.C. Burton, and Kenan Bigby. I just want to say that this has been an incredible conversation. I hope everybody in the audience goes back and takes some lessons and talking points from here and takeaways. But I think Dan has provided the T-shirt for next year's MassINC gathering. Fight the bureaucracy, right? I want that shirt. Fight the bureaucracy T-shirt. So anyways, I think I'm handing it back to Juana now.
Shirley, thank you for leading such a focused and robust discussion on leveraging this once in a generation infusion of dollars to what has been, to do what has never been done before and must be done now, using infrastructure investment to build equitable wealth. And thank you to our extraordinary experts. I mean, MassINC holds a lot of civic convenings, and I must say, this is one for the books. Thank you, JC, Mayor Rivera, Kenan, and Deputy Mayor Thompson for infusing today's conversation with your expertise, your call to actions, and profound insights. You all illustrate that we can and we must leverage these infrastructure dollars in an equitable way. That if we are intentional, collaborative, strategic, that we call things out for what they are and hold our local communities, the state, our private and public partners accountable, we can seize this seminal moment in a way that allows us to build business owners of color to grow and participate and thrive in our communities. And although I wanted the panel discussion to continue because I think there was so much more we can unpack, we must continue with some final recognitions. Each year, we select 2 individuals to receive the Gateway Cities Champion Award. Our final champion this year is my former colleague, Dr. Tracy Corley. As the former leader of MassINC's transformative transit-oriented development initiative, Tracy boldly advanced inclusive economic development throughout our gateway cities. She is someone who is a fierce advocate for those who have traditionally not been a part of decision-making tables. Tracy, thank you for being here.
I think Tracy's most impactful contribution was she was always asking who's not at the table, right? And are we asking the right questions? And how can we ensure that we're not just speaking for those communities, but that we're inviting those communities to the table and creating opportunities for everybody to be able to advocate for themselves. You know, there's a lot of people that say, you know, I want to be a voice for the voiceless. But Tracy says, no, they have voices, right? The folks in our communities aren't voiceless. We just have to make sure that we bring them to the table and are hearing exactly what they have to say.
I think her approach is different in that she really always pushes the folks that she's working with to be thoughtful, you know, about the communities they're working in, and making sure that you know, that the approaches aren't you know, paternalistic or aren't sort of coming in with a savior complex, but that it's really about listening to communities.
And she really cares that people understand what that impact is. And she was always, with me anyway, kind of correcting my perceptions of certain things. She has this vision and she's very clear about, you know, if I would say something, she'd sort of correct me and say, well, you know, but you have to also consider, in a very nice way she would do this, but it was a way of educating me and educating everybody about some of these issues that we think we know about transportation. But she's always able to give us another perspective that I think is really informative and important.
I can't recall a conversation where we didn't see Tracy smile widely, and that smile is certainly infectious. Any conversation we've been a part of, whether in person or via Zoom, that smile and that energy and that optimism that she brings to this work has always been something that has helped facilitate the best conversation and community building in no matter what space that we're in.
I am both honored and humbled by this award. When I first learned that I had been selected to receive this year's Gateway Cities Champion Award, I tried to turn it down. I felt like I did not deserve it because there are so many dedicated people living, working, and innovating in gateway cities every day, making them better places to start a business, go to school, hang out, and raise families. They have had to yell to bring attention to the challenges and injustices, including geographic and racial inequities that Gateway City residents face, the same ones that the pandemic has exacerbated and amplified. Although this award carries my name, I would like to dedicate it to all of the underrepresented Gateway City residents who bear the lion's share of hardships because of their economic conditions, immigration status, physical abilities, gender identities, or skin colors. I would also like to dedicate this award to those who have shepherded me through understanding these hardships and triumphs, challenges and bright spots that exist in all of our gateway cities. I celebrate all the hard work and sleepless nights that go into supporting the lives and livelihoods of the most marginalized people who live in the places that we all call home. With this award, I call attention to the business owners, employers, and developers who have sacrificed profits to ensure that people in their cities can flourish. They practice what economist Kate Raworth preaches, namely that economies should not be designed to grow, but to ensure that people thrive. That economies and cities serve people, not the other way around. This award is for all of you, the everyday champions whose economic development and service selflessly help everyone thrive. I thank you for the honor of supporting you.
Congratulations once again, Tracy. I know that wherever you are, you will continue to drive meaningful change. We miss you at MassINC. And now for our final honorees, I am eager to welcome Maria Fernandez Dominique, Director of Public Affairs at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Thank you, Maria, for being a committed partner of our Gateway Cities work, for prioritizing their needs, and your commitment to investing in building inclusive, resilient economies. Maria will announce our 2021 Gateway Cities Innovators. Welcome.
Thanks for the kind introduction. It is my pleasure to be with you all today representing Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. As some of you know, we are a not-for-profit, community-focused, Massachusetts-based health plan that serves millions of members, thousands of businesses in 80% of cities and towns across the Commonwealth, many of them being gateway cities. At Blue Cross, we are committed to prioritizing and integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into all of our work because, as our CEO always says, it is the right and the smart thing to do. Understanding the racial inequities laid bare by COVID-19 and the racial unrest, we are grateful to be part of this community and having been part of this critical conversation on concrete actions to advancing equitable infrastructure in gateway cities. It is my great honor to be with you to present the Innovation Award honorees. This award recognizes individuals and programs that provide an exceptional contribution to the Commonwealth gateway cities. Each of these individuals have been committed to helping gateway city businesses access the resources they needed during the pandemic. So the 2021 Gateway City honorees are Frank Carvalho, who receives this recognition for his contribution in helping thousands of Black and Brown businesses access vital recovery resources and his commitment for over 2 decades in helping to grow small businesses in the Merrimack Valley. Samalid Hogan is our next honoree, and she has provided hands-on assistance to entrepreneurs in Western Mass through the pandemic and prepared them to tap into emerging opportunities for growth. Fred Taylor is honored for working to ensure that communities of color in Worcester have a voice in deciding how the city invests federal recovery dollars and advocating for the city of Worcester to provide business owners of color equitable access to recovery contracts and grants. And lastly, Ann Burke for her work with business improvement districts and building strong district management organizations to help downtowns succeed and recover. On behalf of Blue Cross Blue Shield, I send a huge congrats and thanks to each of these awardees for your strong dedication to building community wealth. I encourage everybody on this call to read more on their work in the link provided in the chat. Thank you again for having me and having Blue Cross part of this community and this conversation. And now I'll hand it over to Ben for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Maria, and big congratulations to Tracy. It's so good to see all that well-earned recognition in the chat there. I think everybody recognizes you put your heart and soul into this work and really appreciates it. I want to thank each of our innovators, Frank, Ann, Samalid, and Fred, and congratulate you as well. Your ingenuity and selfless work is what makes Gateway City so special and why we enjoy doing this event every year. As today is the day we recognize our Gateway City champions, I want to take a moment to also recognize Eric Rosengren and his efforts to champion gateway cities as president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Through his leadership over the past 14 years now, President Rosengren has provided an outsized contribution to the gateway cities movement, I think we all know, in our efforts to ensure that leaders in high places recognize the intrinsic link between these urban centers and equitable economic development in our Commonwealth and throughout the country. A few parting thoughts on how we can rally behind President Rosengren's call to action. We've heard a lot today about the $5 billion the state is going to be slicing up its portion of the American Rescue Plan. It's going to hopefully serve lots of great needs in gateway cities, whether it's housing, schools, water, sewer, etc. But we also know a portion of that money can go to help small businesses grow and be in a position to compete for federal infrastructure and other procurement that's coming down the road. So our partners at the Coalition for an Equitable Economy are working hard to make sure that there's money for growth capital in the state's plan. I encourage all of you to reach out to your legislators and support that effort. I think it's absolutely critical. The Gateway City Caucus also has legislation in this session to support equitable entrepreneurship. It's a mouthful, including provisions to help Main Street businesses, I think really borrowing from Ann's work and trying to lift it up. So we'll hope you'll support that legislation. And finally, MassINC is going to be launching a new research project soon, examining inclusive procurement policies. We're looking for municipal partners in that work, so please reach out if your city is interested in learning more and participating. We've reached the end of the program now. I want to just one more time thank our speakers, and a special big thank you to the MassINC staff, especially Ashley Guerrero-Agramonte, who did so much to make this convening possible. Thanks to you for joining us and sticking with us till the end. Next year, we hope to be together to celebrate in person for the 10th annual event. All materials and recordings will be provided on our website later today. Follow our social media, subscribe to our regular Gateway Cities Journal newsletter. And before we say goodbye, thank you one more time to all of our wonderful sponsors for their support. It's invaluable. We deeply appreciate it. Without you, this event just wouldn't be possible. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone.